What is going on? Welcome to Module 3, Designing a Social Enterprise Solution. So up until this point, we've talked about what a social enterprise is. We've also talked about the characteristics and the traits of successful entrepreneurs and some strategies for you to double down on what you're great at, basically focus on your strengths, as well as some strategies to create guardrails around your weaknesses. In the last module, we talked about identifying a problem, right? As an entrepreneur, what we are is we are problem solvers. So once we know there's a problem to solve, once we've quantified it, we've done research, then comes the solution. What is going to be our unique approach to solving this problem, and how do we use a business as a vehicle to do this? So that's what I'm going to walk you through in this presentation. And these are a couple of the big things, high level overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about sustainable business models. I'm going to show you a couple of techniques to come up with different business ideas, different solution ideas. We're going to walk through feasibility. So it's not enough just to have an idea. We need to think through it to see if it actually makes sense and if it's something worth pursuing. We're going to walk through the process, the lean model, the lean canvas, and the lean startup process. So we're going to focus on business model design, MVP, creating your unique value proposition, and assessing the opportunity. And I think the secret sauce that a lot of people don't do is finding alignment in that opportunity with what you're uniquely great at, so that it increases your chances of success. So what is a business solution for social enterprise? Well, a business solution for social enterprise is a financially sustainable model that addresses a social or environmental problem while generating a profit and creating positive impact. Remember, we talked about how with social enterprise, it isn't just about profit. It's about profit and impact. So that's really when this comes together is when it becomes a social enterprise. And what are the key components of a social enterprise? Well, for one is you are trying to solve a social or an environmental problem, like we talked about. It's also an innovative solution. Is somebody else already doing something similar? Do you have a unique approach that you can take that will solve that problem in a unique way? Is it financially sustainable? So is it actually a business model that can scale? Is it something that can be replicated and can grow effectively? Measurable impact. Do you have methods to measure the actual success? Can you measure the impact? Can you measure the profits? Can you measure all of those elements that we're going to talk about? And adaptability. Are you able to expand while adapting to new information that comes in? So can you keep your North Star like we talked about, but also adapt on your way there based on what you're learning so that you can achieve your vision? So where do we start? Okay, we have the problem that we want to solve. Do we go with the first thing that we're thinking of? My suggestion is no. First, you need to create a list of possible solutions. And the process that I like to use is a simple brainstorming process. So when you're brainstorming, you want to keep an open mind. Okay, you don't want to filter, you don't want to edit. Right now, it's a volume game. So what I like to do on my brainstorming activities is I will create a timer for 15 minutes, and I like to type, but I will type, I will pose the question, what is the solution for my social enterprise problem, right? And just write. I don't focus on editing, I don't focus on grammar, I just type. And the key is you don't stop typing until the time is up. So even if you're coming up with ideas and you don't have anything else, you can say, okay, right now I don't have anything going on, but you're still writing. And what that does is it primes your brain to keep coming up with ideas. And also the fact that you're writing them down gets them off your mind so you can come up with new ideas. So a couple more techniques. So number one is this technique called mind mapping. And I want you to know that in this module, we're actually going to have activity sheets and resources that are going to walk you through each of these different techniques. But I'll give you a high level overview. So mind mapping is basically writing down, typically you're writing it on paper. You're writing down a thought, and then any thought that connects to it, you're writing like a line in a circle. Anything that connects to that, anything that connects to that. And ultimately you have a view of your brain on paper. Free writing is what I just talked about right now, where you set the timer and you write. Also, a great brainstorming activity that I learned from one of my professors is substitution. So apples and oranges. In one of the workshops that he was given, he said, I want you to take two things that don't seemingly relate to one another, and I want you to create a concept or a business solution around them. So I was working with somebody in the class, and the two things that we thought of were, okay, AI, right? Artificial intelligence is growing rapidly. And then we said accounting. Okay, what can we do? How can we substitute? How can we combine these things so that we can come up with some innovative ideas? And what we came up with is this concept of using AI to act like your bookkeeper or your CFO. So basically, you would upload a spreadsheet or you would upload data from QuickBooks, and then AI would point out gaps. You would say, hey, you're running low on cash here. It would give you, based on your industry, some tips, some feedback. So obviously it's an idea. It would still have to be developed, but it's an example of how you can use combining or substitution to come up with some innovative ideas. Once you have a list of ideas, 10, 15, 20, then we want to do what's called evaluating feasibility. Can this idea actually be turned into a business? All right, for this, we're going to assess the practicality, the impact, and the scalability. Okay, as we go through this process, I'm gonna touch more on what scalability is. We want to identify the resources and potential barriers. So rather than say, hey, I love this idea and start, we need to think ahead as to what barriers and roadblocks we might run into so that we can plan for them now. Once you go through them, you say, okay, how practical is this? What kind of impact can this scale? What resources do I need? You're going to find yourself eliminating some of those ideas, right? Then you're going to narrow down those options based on feasibility. And then we're going to choose a solution that fits your goals. And we're going to talk about how to choose and which one to choose. But you need to go through this process first. What you don't want to do is spend a lot of money and a lot of time only to find out that it can't be done, or that there's a lot of roadblocks that you could have avoided had you just thought through this sooner. Expanding on the resources and the potential barriers. So when you're thinking of an idea that you want to launch, think through, how much money will it take to launch this? What kind of a team are you going to need? What kind of resources? Is there going to be any regulatory, any legal, any logistical challenges? And develop contingency plans. The beautiful thing about, Google about just secondary research is that it can show you what the industry norm is for a similar type of business. So it can tell you X type of business typically requires this type of team, typically requires this type of startup capital. So think through all of this ahead of time. And then as you have your list, you can compare your ideas, then making it much easier to choose one over another. Then we narrow down our options, right? So like I said, we rank ideas. Now here's what's great is we're going to rank them based on how they align with our why and our resources. I'll give you an example. As I was thinking through Niarani, which is the e-commerce brand that I've launched, where we work with artisans in Mexico to sell product online and basically expand their reach. First, I looked at resources. Okay, so what does a typical business like this take? How can I test this quickly and cheaply? But also, does it align with my goals, right? So part of my goals were I want to create an impact in the world in terms of, helping artisans and helping indigenous groups. Then it's, what are my values? So what was my why? My why is to help make others the best version of themselves. Does this align? Yes. Okay, we have a fit. Then you go through here is you narrow your focus, you narrow your target, and you eliminate anything that's unrealistic or unviable. Now, as an entrepreneur, we're very optimistic. So I'm not going to be the one here to tell you what is realistic and what is not. That is for you to determine. But by looking at your ideas and seeing them side by side will give you an idea of which one you are more likely to succeed at, and makes this process much more effective. Then we choose a solution and we design a business model. So simply said is a business model is how you make money. Okay. So your business model needs to align with the triple bottom line. And we're going to touch on it again. We need to evaluate the financial viability and the profitability, and we need to ensure that the model is sustainable. So the great thing about this process, again, is we are thinking through this. A lot of entrepreneurs start a business and figure a lot of this out as they go. By thinking ahead, it allows you to focus and really prioritize the things that matter with your business idea. This is when we talked about the triple bottom line. We talked about the alignment of people, planet, and profit. Now, if your idea overlaps these three circles, then you've got something worth pursuing and worth looking at. A reminder, people, planet, profit. So when we're talking about people and social impact, it's, are you sourcing your products fairly? Is there inclusivity in your hiring processes? Are you paying people fairly? Are you helping the community? And then with planet, are you reducing waste? Are your products sustainable? Do you have a sustainable supply chain? And then with profit, it's, are you focused on the short term or the long term? Are you being transparent? Are you being innovative in your business model? And in order to do this, so we've gone through problem, we've gone through solution, as in brainstorming and coming up with some ideas. Then we've gone through the process of actually seeing which are feasible, right? Maybe you have a list now of two or three, which can potentially be done. What do you do here? Do you run and go create a business plan? Do you start the business? And do you just jump in? Do you start raising capital? The process that we prefer is what's called the lean startup method. And I just want you to know, for this, I want you to go into the module, because we're going to have more breakdowns and more resources as to what the lean startup method is, and other tools so that you can implement it effectively. But the lean startup method is a way of creating a business that allows for you to test things quickly and cheaply. As opposed to what I've said is a lot of entrepreneurs will create a solution in search of a problem, right? Or they'll create a product in search of a customer. This allows you to test your assumptions up front. It's a very simple model, and it's called the lean startup cycle. At the very top is your idea. Okay, so we just went through the process of your solution, your idea. Then we go to build, and I'm going to touch on this. We go to build, then you have your product, then we measure results through data, we learn. Based on what we've learned, we adjust, and we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again. And this allows us to create something that people actually want without risking everything up front. Lean startup process. Number one is you start with the business concept or a product idea. That's what we've been talking about up until now. Number two is you build, and we're going to build something called an MVP, a minimum viable product. Number three, we're going to test the MVP with real people, with real potential customers, and see what their feedback is. Number four, we're going to learn. We're going to get data, what worked, what didn't work. Number five is we're going to adjust, we're going to pivot. We talked about how important it is for an entrepreneur to be adaptable, to be flexible. Here is where we take our data and we adjust, we adjust. Why lean startup? Well, for one, it's efficient. Number two is it allows us to adapt. Number three is that we focus on customers first. So through this process, we are interviewing, we are surveying people, and we are finding out who our ideal customer is. not based on what they tell us, not based on, hey, I love your idea and yes, I would support you. No, we are measuring based on who actually takes action, who pulls out money and buys from you up front, who signs up for your free report or whatever it is that you're selling. I think one of the biggest risks, biggest benefits of lean startup is risk management. So it allows us to see what is and what is not going to work before we've invested a lot of resources. And the fifth is speed. It allows us to adapt quickly and launch quickly. One of the best ways that I've found to actually put this concept of lean startup in one place is what's called the lean canvas. So the lean canvas is and there's going to be a download. It's your lean startup process on paper. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll talk to them at a high level. So problem, we talked about what we assume the problems are that we're solving, right? What are the top 3 problems? And then solution, right? What's the business that we want to create? What are the top 3 features? Key metrics, how are we going to measure this? Unique value proposition, we're going to talk about this in a couple of slides, but what makes you unique? What makes you different? What makes you better? On the bottom left, it's your cost structure. How much are things going to cost? How much do your costs change if your volume increases? And then revenue streams, how are you going to make money? The great thing about the lean startup process is that you actually will everything on here is pretty much an assumption. You're going to test the assumption, you're going to adapt, and you're going to adjust. Benefits of the lean canvas: speed and simplicity, problem focused, and it encourages data-driven decision making. One of the best things that you can do as an entrepreneur is separate your emotion from your logic. We tend to be very passionate. We tend to be very optimistic. It's great. It's what keeps the vision alive. But when we need to make decisions around business, we need to find a way to separate that emotion from logic. And this lean canvas allows us to do that because it allows us to test. So here's where it starts to get good, and here's where it starts to get fun. We have an idea. We think it's going to work. How do we know it's going to work? Well, we do that through this process called an MVP. And an MVP is basically what is the simplest way for you to display your solution to see if people want it. I love this graph. Basically, minimum viable product. So it shows, right? Do people want a light bulb? Well, it starts with the candle, and it just shows kind of like the evolution until you get to your product. The official definition is an MVP is a simplified version of a product with core features released quickly to gather feedback and refine the product iteratively. That means you adapt and you adjust. And why? Well, it minimizes development costs. It reduces time to market, which means it reduces the time from idea to launch. It ensures that you're focusing on the features that customers value. Spend your time and energy on things people want, not things that you think people want. And it enables continuous improvement based on user feedback. And here's the process to create your very own MVP. So think about the primary problem that you're solving, right? What is the customer pain point? What are the core features to solve that? Then we're going to develop an MVP, and I have tools that I'm going to show you as to how to do that. Then we're going to launch, gather feedback, analyze, and then we repeat. I'll give you another example. I have a social enterprise that I'm working on that is an all-natural organic chip. How would I go about creating an MVP for this? Well, for one is identify the primary problem. So my assumption is that a big group in the Latino community is underserved. Diabetes tends to be very high in our community. And this is a pain point that I want to solve, right? So I went through the process of surveying and asking, okay, what are your biggest pain points, and what would be a desired solution to solve this? And through all this process, I came up with, I want to create healthy junk food. So what are the core features, right? I had a list of like 20 different things. I can make the chips non-GMO. I can make them vegan. I can make them all natural. I can make them in funky flavors. I can make them in funky shapes. I had all of this. And through my process, I developed a simple solution, which is I want organic, non-GMO, and I want plant-based, right? These are my three things. Now I worked through a process of creating this and then going to my customers and seeing if they actually want it. So that's when I launch, I gather feedback, and then how do people respond? I can tweak. Do they even want a chip? Do they want different flavors? What do they value? What do they not? I analyze the feedback and I iterate and I repeat steps 4 to 5. So problem, core features, develop the MVP, launch and gather feedback, analyze feedback, and then we repeat the cycle. Here are some examples of an MVP. So let's say you have this incredible idea of launching a restaurant. Instead of going all in and leasing a space and starting a restaurant, a very simple way to test your concept is through a food truck. You can get a simplified menu. You can rent a food truck. You can park where your customers are and see if people want it. Check this out. When Dropbox launched, their MVP was a simple video. Now, it wasn't even their product. It was a video of what Dropbox could do. So they had a one-page website. And on there was this video's here, 4.5 minutes. And they're walking through what Dropbox is going to be. Then underneath, they had a place for people to sign up if they were interested. This cost them almost nothing to test. This is an example of Facebook's MVP. It was called The Facebook. And at first, they were testing it only with university students. So this is the Harvard University one. Then they expanded it and they grew, but it was very simple. This is Airbnb's. It was called Air Bed and Breakfast, which it was shortened down to Airbnb. This is Groupon. Groupon was called The Point. So Groupon was actually a blog where they would email and send people coupons directly. They did this and they got such good feedback that this evolved into ultimately what became Groupon. A little caveat on this, I want to share like a personal anecdote is I've tested an MVP a couple of different ways. When it came to a cookie for my last startup, our keto cookie, our MVP was a home-baked cookie. I placed a $20 ad on Reddit, and I sent people to this very simple page on PayPal, the world's first keto cookie. Will anybody buy? People bought. It showed me that there was proof of concept. I've tested an MVP for this fashion brand idea that I had. It was this concept of there were these rare exotic woods, and they were cut in the shape of a bow tie with cloth in the middle. And I went on Facebook and I found a mock-up of a similar product. And I said, I have an idea for this product, this bow tie product. And I uploaded the picture. If you're interested, send payment here. If I sell 20, if I pre-sell 20, I'm going to go into production. If not, I give you your money back. I sold, I think, like 25 or 30. I used that money to actually launch the business. So that was a very simple way to do it. And then another one is I had this men's lifestyle blog, which is kind of like a men's health GQ magazine. But it didn't start as a blog. It started as an ebook. So I saw that guys were asking a lot of questions about men's grooming and men's style. And I asked somebody that was a stay-at-home mom, I paid her to write an ebook for me based on their biggest problems and challenges. Didn't cost me that much. The ebook did well, which showed me there was demand, and then it expanded into this whole influencer community. Zappos, and one of my favorite examples as well. When Zappos launched, the founder of Zappos didn't even have inventory. What he did is he went to local shoe stores and said, look, if you let me come in here and take a picture of your inventory, I'm going to put it on my website. And if somebody buys, I will come back here. I will pay you full price for the product and I'll ship it. That's what he did. He created inventory online because he wanted to test, will people even buy shoes online? At that time, the thought was that no, people are not going to want to buy shoes because they want to try clothing on first. He got the inventory. Sorry, he didn't get the inventory. He took the pictures of the inventory. He sold the product. He went in, paid full price, and shipped it. But that was enough for him to know that there was demand. And then he kind of doubled down on that idea. In order for an MVP to be successful, you need to embrace what's called iterative development and improvement. It's not going to be perfect. Your brand name might not be perfect. Your idea, your features might change. Think of business as an experiment. Gather feedback. Always continue to improve, aim for progress, not perfection. So now we have an MVP. We're getting feedback. People are interested. How do we turn this into a business? Because a product on its own is not a business. Well, let's look at sustainable business models. How do we turn this into an actual business? In order for a business model to be sustainable, you must be able to balance profit with the social environmental benefits that we talked about, the triple bottom line. We're going to talk about sustainable business models of some of the biggest, most well-known social enterprises out there. We need to make sure that we are ensuring long-term viability, and we need to plan for growth while maintaining our core values. Remember that whole alignment and North Star concept. So what is Tom's sustainable business model? Well, it really breaks down into 4 key things. On the social impact side, it's anytime somebody buys a pair of shoes, Toms will donate some to a child in need. For the environmental responsibility is the material used to make the shoes are sustainable, they're vegan, they invest in eco-friendly packaging. Now, in terms of financial sustainability, is the business profitable, so it supports ongoing social impact, and the brand reputation and social media, social mission drive customer loyalty. So because there's a connection with the brand, people come back. When people come back to buy again, that increases your profits. And then scalability and adaptability. They've expanded into eyewear, clean water, right? So shoes is where it started. Just like, I mean, we talk about Amazon. Amazon started as books, and then they evolved and they adapted. Patagonia. On the environmental side, they're focused on reducing waste and carbon footprint. They use sustainable materials and promote repair, reuse, and recycle initiatives. They focus a lot on fair labor practices as well. So they ensure the ethical treatment of their workers throughout the supply chain. They advocate for social and environmental responsibility in the industry. In terms of financial sustainability, they have a business model where a portion of profits are donated to environmental causes. I think it's 1% of revenue, which in a big company like that is a lot of money. Transparency and accountability, they share information on their supply chain. They share information on their environmental impact, their labor practices, and they encourage customers to make informed choices. Grameen Bank, I wanted to give an example of a maybe lesser known brand, but they focus on providing small loans to low-income individuals, particularly women. Their focus is to address poverty and promote economic growth. On their financial sustainability, they're profitable through interest on their loans, so they need to make money. Community empowerment, they encourage entrepreneurship, education, skill development amongst borrowers. So you're not just giving them money, you're giving them tools and resources to make them effective and successful with that money, which increases their odds of paying you back as well. Scalability and adaptability, the model has been replicated globally with other brands, and they continually innovate to address new challenges and opportunities in the world of microfinance. To focus on long-term viability, we need to plan for growth while maintaining core values. We need to adapt to changing market conditions. So we saw how Tom's has evolved into sunglasses, and I think even water. We want to measure, we want to monitor. That allows us to be transparent. What are our KPIs, the things that we're going to track towards success? Okay, so now we have a business model, right? The machine that's going to create this solution to change the world. But what makes us unique, right? Why would somebody buy from us compared to somebody else. This is a part of business that is often ignored in the rush to market. But as an entrepreneur that's going to be successful, you really want to prioritize your UVP. So you're going to address your social problem uniquely. You're going to identify and highlight this competitive advantage. I'm going to help you create a UVP statement. So just like our North Star that we talked about in module 1, this is going to align us and let us know what makes us unique. And we're going to find out how to differentiate from competition, from competitors. First, we need to understand the problem, but not at a surface level. We need to get to the root causes. So we're going to conduct research and analysis. And we talked about this in the last module. That's where the secondary and the primary research comes in. We're going to engage with affected communities and the stakeholders. Then we're going to identify and highlight the competitive advantage that we have. So what sets your solution apart? How do we leverage your strengths and your resources for greater impact? This is where a lot of the UVP comes in, right? So it's not just having a great idea, it's how do you uniquely impact your business, right? What are your unique strengths and resources that allow you to be more successful than somebody else trying to focus on the same solution? I want you to pause here and go to the UVP exercise. And there's going to be some tips on how to actually create it. I've actually created a template for you to follow that'll make this process pretty easy. Here is the template. So our product or service helps customer who want the desire buy your solution and makes it unique. Here's an example. Our eco-friendly laundry detergent helps environmentally conscious consumers who want to reduce their carbon footprint by using plant-based ingredients and biodegradable packaging. That is an effective UVP. So let's focus on differentiation. One way to make sure that what you're offering is unique is let's look at the competitors. Sign up for their email list, purchase their products, study them on social media, analyze and assess your competition, and identify gaps and opportunities. What are they not doing that you can do effectively? And then once you know that, we can focus on standing out. So a couple of ways to stand out is you can focus specifically on a niche. Back to Male Standard, which was my men's lifestyle blog, I didn't start off trying to be a GQ magazine. What I saw is that nobody was talking about men's grooming. Now, I wasn't passionate about men's grooming. Note to self, this was before I hopped on the social enterprise approach to business. But what I did see is that nobody was talking about grooming. And if I was to become the authority in grooming, that would allow me to expand afterward. Focus on building strategic partnerships, innovating and iterating on existing solutions. Pause here and do the business concept exercise. Okay, now we're going to talk about assessing the opportunity and seeing how big it is and how we can uniquely solve it. So we're going to evaluate the value added by your concept. We're going to look at the market size, the timing, the resources. We're going to align the opportunity with your passion and your skills. And we're going to determine if this opportunity is worth pursuing. We need to make sure that this opportunity aligns with what you value. So we're going to assess your expertise and your knowledge in the field, and we're going to ensure that your commitment to this, your North Star, ties in. So how do we identify if this opportunity is worth pursuing? Well, we analyze the risks and the roadblocks. We evaluate the potential ROI, right? Yes, we want to impact the world, but we also want to make a profit. So we can look at potential social environmental returns, and we can learn how to balance short-term and long-term returns. And then we assess the alignment of this with your core mission and your values. Once we've gone through this whole process, that is when you've already looked at the problem, you've come up with a solution, you've gone through the process of narrowing down your solution and looked at the feasibility of that solution, we then have looked at how to be unique, how to craft a business model, and we have made a lot of progress because now we have data, now we know what's going to work so that we can scale and grow. So here's what's going to happen next in the future modules. We are going to focus on designing a solution for social entrepreneurship. We are going to brainstorm and come up with those ideas. So if you haven't done that yet, I want you to do this as soon as this module is over. Then I want you to test, test, test. Focus on MVP. Don't focus on perfection. Focus on progress. Then we're going to focus on your UVP and we're going to assess opportunities and risk. Once you've done that, once you've thought through this process, then you're going to be ready for the next module. So do the work, do the activities, look at the resources, and then join me for the next module.